Good. So this is important because, as I told you guys, the strength of our movement are its people, and you can see, we have people from all the way from Seattle, California, to Reunion Island. Yesterday, we had a phenomenal meeting with people joining from Australia and on to through the U.S. It's been a long road. We've accomplished a lot. What I wanted to do in a way that today's talk is going to be technical. As leaders, you need to know the details. So yesterday we spent a lot of time with we spent a lot of time with Vince and others talking about how it's going to be our strategy for the website, how it's going to be our strategy for social media, where we need to have the main points, be very succinct. In here, I want to go into the substance that will make the top, the sort of the projection of who we are as an organization, what we want to do, and what we want to accomplish for Mauritius as a model for the world, bringing Mauritians and friends of Mauritius. The talk will be in my presentation is going to be in two parts. First, I'll go into the details of the 52035 vision, and this will form a template. Each one of you will be doing at some point a town hall or talking to a local group or talking to a bigger group or even having an elevator talk, talking to one-on-one to someone, talking about describing the foundation. So, so if you could, be able to articulate what we are about is going to be important. I'm going to go a little bit fast. I'll leave a lot of time for discussion, hopefully. But if you don't understand anything, please come in the line and let me clarify things that are not apparent. Again, if you guys could mute yourself, that would be great. And so we go. Okay, so the movement. We are a healthcare policy organization at the core. We are proposing an innovative healthcare policy to be tested in the country of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean as a model for the world. It is based on empowerment of communities and a brand new invention which we call the community health officer, and I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about that and how we view this 52035 vision. Let me spend some time talking about mission statement. As leaders, you guys ought to understand the vital elements of the mission statement. Anytime you see an organization, you see mission statement, you glaze over. While most people will glaze over, this should be your starting point in understanding what we are about. And I'm going to point a couple of words at the risk of being a little bit academic, but those words and terms are important because they drive our ideas, and those ideas drive our action and then progress ultimately. The first set of terms is around non-partisanship and non-sectarian, not-for-profit. So we are all volunteers in the organization, as you guys know, and we are non-sectarian and non-partisan. This is critically important in what we are doing. We don't belong to any parties. Now, individual members can belong to parties, political parties, or other kinds of associations. But while you're conducting the business of the 52035 movement, while you're speaking for or on behalf of the movement, it is crystal clear that you will not be political partisanship or sectarian in terms of what your gender orientation is, what your national origin is, what your race and ethnic belonging is, makes no difference to us. And this is perhaps one of the most important features of our organization. Many organizations, put it as part of their mission statement, but we live by it, we preach it, And by our action, we demonstrate that we're nonpartisan and non-sectarian. The other couple of stuff and couple of terms that we're going to come over is we have an aspirational goal, the signature goal. And that aspirational goal, what we're working towards, is to decrease uncontrolled diabetes prevalence in the country of Mauritius to 5% by the year 2035. That is the etymology and the genesis of the term 5-2035. Are we going to achieve it? We are working towards it, but you have to understand that this is aspirational. So we aspire that in the next 15 years, together with our effort, we're going to get there. And so the second paragraph of the mission statement is, what do we do, right? And so our goal is to empower communities, and I'm going to talk about how we plan to empower communities, content experts, and government through how is the scientific, medical, social, and philanthropic efforts and advocacy. And one of the central goals, you see there are Mauritians in this call, but half of us were not born in Mauritius. We are friends of Mauritius, or some of you didn't know Mauritius existed 3 months ago. So while we will start in Mauritius as a lab, to enact our healthcare policy model in a scientific manner, our intent and goal is global. We should never lose sight of the fact that we intend to spread from Mauritius by testing the model to other countries in the world to help healthy lifestyle and better health to people around the world. So those are things that, just look at it, read it a couple of times, and you will start to get a flavor of who we are. And again, quick terms for the students. We define CNCD, chronic non-communicable diseases, that are the associated conditions, preventable, of type 2 diabetes, of coronary artery disease, hypertension, and stroke. Sometimes you will see when you read scientific papers, it's described as NCD. We put the C in front of the NCD because NCD also has other terms like respiratory diseases and other chronic other diseases that is not our focus. While we start with CNCD, and at another meeting, Mr. Burke and others will tell you about our goal in developing the community health officer, will be larger than just CNCD and affect other aspects of health too. These are the take-home messages. I want you to read this and reflect over it. What in these 4 movements, what do we want to do, right? So the fact is Mauritius has one of the worst profiles in CNCD in the world. 40% of the adult population between ages of 18 and 74 are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. It is, we think, a healthcare crisis in the country, which is 1.3 million people, half the size of Rhode Island. Our focus is on community health and community empowerment, and we think that offers the best chance to succeed against CNCD, not only in Mauritius, but around the world. And here I'm using another term, but I want you guys to understand that Dr. Gunput came up with a better term that we're now going to use henceforth. It's called community health officer. So previously we've used the term community health nurse practitioner, we've used the term community health advanced practitioner, but whenever you see CHNP or CHAP, think of it as CHO. Terms are important because, as you'll see, once we are finished with the academic talk and you understanding deeply what we are about, the rest of the year will be spending in very targeted, social media and other types of interactions. So therefore, the terms are of incredible importance in how we can get to a large audience. And finally, we think that to curb CNCD in Mauritius as a model for the world. Again, I want to stress that while we are in Genesis, many of our original members are from Mauritius, we now have a larger footprint around the world of Mauritians from the Mauritian diaspora, but also from other friends of Mauritius and people who are interested in healthcare policy, in public health, and community health. So, this is something that you ought to know, even though if you're not in the medical field, you ought to know why do we care about CNCD? Because under our nose, around the world, CNCD is a pandemic. So pandemic is typically used for, as you guys know, infectious diseases like flu in 1917, where you had a lot of people who pass away. Do understand that we view CNCD as being a pandemic, and it is does not affect one country alone. Many, if not most, countries are affected by these chronic diseases, and the cost is staggering: 1.8 trillion in 2015, and I think 5 years later, I need to review that cost, and maybe it should be on the rise. And the other aspect that I want the leaders to understand, that we have talked about in the white paper and other stages, in that CNCD is not the fault of one person, or it's not the fault of people who don't have healthy lifestyle and diet. It's not the fault of doctors who are not doing the right thing. It's not the fault of politicians who don't have the courage to do innovative and enact transformative policies. It's a combination of all of those things between health, economy, and aging population, unhealthy lifestyle. All of those elements get. Hey, Krishna, welcome from Botswana. If you, if you could mute yourself, we will. We are in the midst of the presentation. We'll be back with you in discussion. Good, great. And so CNCD is a pandemic, and it's a multi-sectoral failure. For the associate members, I want to understand that it is not one sector of activity or society that has failed, but it is a collection and addition of all these different sectors that brings together why we have a situation in Mauritius where 40% of the adults have CNCD and diabetes. And then the final sort of movement in these in the CNCD slide is that CNCD is a pandemic due to a multisectoral failure, and only a multisectoral approach will solve this preventable worldwide health crisis. So here is the point, right? We don't only need physicians. We don't only need politicians. We don't only need economists. We need all sorts of citizens to come together to help us move the CNCD picture in Mauritius as a model for the world. I put this because of sentimental value. When about 3 or 4 years ago, people like Nilesh, Dave, people like Jay, Dave, Nilesh, myself, and Surya Tenrain in France started strategizing in how we will become a global organization. We focused on the 7 countries where we have big communities in the Mauritian diaspora. And so initially, we focused on 7 countries, but specifically over the activities that we have done over the last year, we have now ambitions to go farther than the 7 initial countries. And so you can see I just saw Jovin join from, he lives in Finland, but he was calling from Switzerland. So we have Germany, Finland, we have Mr. Kania from Botswana, who just joined, is on the line right now. We have South Africa, and our ambition is to propagate the model around the world and bring a grassroots movement that has not been seen before in the world. So what you guys are doing is part of a history in the making. I am convinced of that, and the ELT is convinced of that. Okay, so I just want to talk about a little bit about Mauritius. Why we need, this is the country to test out the model. Of course, then we're going to talk about the principles how it works, and the path ahead and discussion. So the principles and how it works is a little bit technical. I have to give you that. But again, you guys are not on social media. You're sitting. This is something that you need to understand, because you will be training other people, and you need to have a fairly good understanding of our technical aspects of our movement, because that's where we start. I'm going to leave this for a couple of seconds so that in the video you can pause and look at the data. But basically the bottom line here is Mauritius is a middle income country, 1.3 million people, half the size of Rhode Island, about 720 square miles in the main island. It has a multi-ethnic group. We are a middle income country, means that our income per capita is somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000 a year. Our healthcare expenditure is halfway between compared to US, or even less, I would say, in some measures. But the bottom right graph is telling, right? Because in terms of prevalence of diabetes, we take home the prize. And so while we take home the prize, it may be a sad picture and then a picture that one doesn't want to see. The thing that is very comforting is why, perhaps one of the secret reasons why Mauritius can be the ground zero for our vision is at the top right, the government health infrastructure. It has an amazing infrastructure in this small part of a area with the community health centers, with area health centers. So it is a place where we can deploy the vision, as we will talk about, and it's nimble enough that we can achieve this possibility. Okay. Here too, I will leave the slide on for some time, especially for the associate members. If you can go back and pause it later when you get the video. But any big idea, we think, like 52035 idea, which is transformative and revolutionary, needs to have principles by which it is guided. And we have these 5 principles. And so if you can seep in what those principles mean and how does it relate to the work we're doing, you'll have a better understanding of what the movement is about. So promotion of national unity and social justice is at the core of our principle, and we do that in action. We will use the seed scale model, which has a lot of literature on it. If you read the white paper, you will see. We'll invest in human potential that will enable existing institutions to grow in a manner, having buy-in with the stakeholders in a fiscally responsive manner. We will focus not only on public sector, but public-private partnerships, because public-private partnerships is an effective way of creating innovation and of moving things faster than if the project was only geared to top-down governmental model. Now I want to spend a little bit of time in the last principle, because that is what we differentiate ourselves from many of the public health policy ideas and thoughts about, is that we want to focus on pragmatism and frugal innovation as a core principle, not as we wish it could be, we would like it to be, but every health policy intervention we want to do. Dr. Gunput and myself and others are going to be writing the final protocol for the CLAD study. Pragmatism and frugal innovation is going to be front and center. Mr. Burke, Ms. Marshall, and Dr. Durgahi and others are going to be writing the white paper for the community health officer curriculum and training. Pragmatism and frugal innovation is going to be part and parcel of what we do as a health policy model. And so these 5 principles are important for you to know and understand, because then when we enact something and do something, it will make sense when you view it through the lens of these 5 principles. These next 2 slides are important for you to understand, and as simple as it may be, when you look at it, um, these are theoretical ideas that have not truly been put in practice. These next two slides, and the 5-20-35 movement, we will put it in practice. We will make it reality. We'll make it reality in the ways that we're going to talk about shortly. One is, this is from a very important uh, book, Primary Care, that was written in the mid-90s, where and it's based on model actually for traditionally from public health in other primary care books, but this Institute of Medicine report crystallized it for our movement and for our vision, in that you have to look at the patient being part of a network of family and community. And on the other hand, there is a dance with the clinician, and that clinician can be a community health officer, could be a physician, could be a community health worker, or whatever. And that clinician is also part of a team, and is also part of an ecosystem of health in each and every country, right? So think about it. You may go to the doctor, but that's not, you don't exist independently, especially in terms of CNCD. You exist in your family. Your behavior is determined by how your family behaves and your community behaves. In the same way, the clinician behaves in the way that the team constrains the clinician to behave, and in the way that the ecosystem constrains the clinician to behave. For example, in Mauritius, a consultant physician at a public hospital sees, oh gosh, 50 to 60 patients in half a day. So that behavior, I mean, if you are seeing 60 patients in 4 hours, you cannot spend time talking about how you're doing. Many of us who are in medicine have done rotations in Mauritius. You sit under this small room and you have handlers who just pass on the patients. And the physician, the consultant, just has time to look at the blood work. Okay, medicine. Okay, good. Next, right? So the behavior, the culture, all of that is shaped by economic and reality factors. So understanding this is important for leaders to know why we're doing what we're doing. The next one is also an innovation in the way that we're bringing it to the 5-20-35 model. So look, traditionally, healthcare is a top-down invitation. So content experts like myself, like Ms. Marshall, Mr. Burke, Dr. Kanpat, and others, physicians and nurses and others, we are the content experts, and we interact with officials, and we determine what's going to be doled out to the community. And the community is a customer, typically, or receives whatever the cahoots of the medical professionals and the government, the policy implementers do, right? What we want to do is change that model topsy-turvy, upside down, through the seed scale model. I will invite you to look at the white paper. It goes into details, and this book is really, when I read that book about 10 years ago, I was just blown away, because it spoke to a vision that we could be implemented in healthcare in a way that no one had thought about. And so that is the core mechanism in the way that we work in the 5-20-35 vision, where you have officials, content experts, and community all working together, right? And this is as simple as it is. It just seems obvious, right? But it is not obvious because it has not happened in any system that we have looked at. Uh, Most systems are predominantly forcefully top-down. And so by changing the view of the community to be part and parcel of the journey of health, we're changing the narrative. We're changing the culture. We're changing this whole model of existence between um, we're sort of truly integrating this circle of activity. So I want, for those who are interested, please read the white paper, and you will understand what the difference is when we talk about. And this is the working end. So this you should be able to talk in a elevator talk. In the United States, an elevator talk means, you happen to get on the 10th floor with an important person, and you have to tell them something by the time you get to the lobby, right? And you have exactly 43 seconds. And if you have 43 seconds to make the sale, if you will, this is the working model. So the 5-20-35 model is based on an invented and innovative community health officer that will work with a group of citizens and leaders within that group to follow them over time and affect better health and lifestyle changes. And so this slide number 16 should be something that you look at very sort of understand in its instinctively what this is about. And this has not been something that has been proposed before. This is innovative. And so we come to the community health officer, and I can tell you that this is this is the tip of the spear of our model and our vision. And this is an invention of the 5-20-35 vision. And this healthcare professional, does not exist currently. There are models that exist. So, for example, Mr. Burke, our Chief Curriculum Officer, is a physician assistant. Ms. Marshall is a family nurse practitioner. There are others who are community health workers. The community health officer sort of melds all of these inputs and creates a new type of healthcare professional for the 21st century. And so when I say, we are truly the ambition for the vision is huge. Imagine we're creating something new in a field that has existed for hundreds and perhaps thousands of years. And so what you need to understand about this new healthcare professional proposal are the three pillars. And the three pillars are around what do they do? Why are they different from the community health worker or the physician assistant or the nurse practitioner? In that they will be focusing in their practice in clinical excellence by those attributes we talk about. One of the major problems, not only in Mauritius, but around the world, is non-standardization of healthcare. So if you have, in Mauritius, for example, if you have someone who is trained in India, may give a certain kind of therapy. If someone who is trained in France, the patient goes to someone trained in France, they will give their standard kind of therapy, if they do. And so there is a lot of mix and matches, and things don't work out, and people move from one physician to another. So the community health officer will standardize under the supervision of a physician, a community health doctor, will standardize clinical excellence. The next aspect, which is not present practically, if you go to any medical school curriculum, somewhere, and somehow we talk about community health, but that's just a chapter in the book. Even in nurse practitioners, community engagement is not currently part in the way that we envision it. And Mr. Burke and team are going to be working to articulating that in the white paper in the time to come. So community engagement is going to be part because they're going to be responsible for a local group of people, and they're going to engage that community in a way that a healthcare professional has not done before. And the third aspect is even more innovative. Uh, it looks so obvious now and self-evident, but it is not, right? And we want the CHO to have inbuilt research and training within their day-to-day activity. So we have issues like community research that they can do in real time, figure out what's working, using scientific methods, test whether any intervention they are doing is working or not in the community, talk to other CHOs, and improve in general in a communicative way that brings better health to the whole country or a whole region or a whole nation. So these three things of community health, what we envision, is truly revolutionary in the way that it's conceived. It's revolutionary because there is nowhere in the world where practitioners, regular practitioners, are involved, on a day-to-day basis in real-world research, in determining what is working. Because if there is a standard, that's the standard that stays static for in many places. And so this is a slide number 19. You ought to know, why is the CHO different from what exists out there? Why is it not a doctor? Why it's not a nurse? And how we're going to affect change based on the community health block model. Okay. I'm going to skip over this part, but know that one of our mottos is people power, science first. A lot of effort is being deployed right now to test out the CLI, the 52035 model in Mauritius using the CLI study. This would be a presentation in the future by maybe Dr. Gunput will present the details of the study as we are proposing. We are engaging the government of Mauritius as well as private enterprises to run a pilot impact study. What we learn from it, we want to capacity build in Mauritius, and from that learning, we want to export to other countries in the world. A lot of work has gone into this, and there are documents. If you want to look at them, let us know, and we will share those documents with you, and the protocol concept and stuff like that. Okay, so I will stop here. This concludes sort of the overview in the technical aspect of the 52035 vision. If anyone has any questions, now is the time perhaps before we get to the next part that will be the GFCH leader. Anyone, any questions? It's a shy group, huh? So everyone understood what it is. Yes.
This is Krishna Asaf here from Germany.
Oh, hello.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
So thank you very much. So really great, and I came to understand now exactly what we are talking about, because I knew a little bit, but really very good that you, in a very short time, gave a very good view. My first question is because I'm a commercial guy. So how are we prepared, or have you got any thought about managing the pharmaceutical companies? Because this is what we are doing, is a kind of get people better without the real remedy or taking medicine for the whole of the time of their life.
Yeah, so it's ironic because many of the leaders in the organization, me included, are part of the pharmaceutical industry. I would say, let me state a couple of general things. The pharmaceutical industry is not part of the problem, right? So the to sort of to answer your question directly, Ashok, let me get to the this part of, so here, right? So in clinical excellence, the community health officer would follow guidelines. So the medical team within the foundation is now trying to harmonize North American guidelines for treatment of CNCD, European guidelines for treatment of CNCD, and other guidelines, so that they will work on an algorithmic way, right? So so for example, let me give you an example. If there is a 60-year-old man who has hypertension, the guideline says we need a beta blocker. That's one type of medication for hypertension. And if the beta blocker doesn't work, then we go to another class of medication. So because it's going to be in the public sector, we have what is known as a formulary. So, in discussion with the community health doctor, the CHO will say, well, I'm seeing Mr. Jean-Pierre here. He's 50 years old. He has hypertension that is not being controlled by diet and exercise. The protocol says we should start him on a beta blocker at, say, 10 milligram of a particular medication. So that is inbuilt, right? So I think that while we will be using in the clinical excellence pillar, the system or the CHO will be using medications, we will not be having direct contact with the pharmaceutical industry, so to speak. That is the realm of research and other kinds of things. So I don't view it, but again, it will be in time will tell. Any other comments?
Yes, I do have actually. In this
This
type
is
of
Jay.
endeavor.
This is
This
Jay.
is Jay from Seattle.
Yep.
Yes, this is Jay from Seattle. Can you hear me well?
Yep.
So I've worked for Novo Nordisk before, and this is one of the companies, and there are many others that do help organizations or foundations like us. Novo Nordisk, even though a pharma company, they are very, very helpful in this type of endeavor. Even in Mauritius, they were there in Mauritius in around 2012 to help the government of Mauritius fight diabetes and other complications.
Very good comment. Ashok, does that answer somewhat your question?
This was a nice answer. Thank you very much. But still, this is something which I know in the commercial world, the guys that are spending billions of euros to produce new medicine, not directly but indirectly, there would be a real effect for them. Maybe not at every stage, but at some stage. This is not I don't need an answer now, but I would just like the interest of this association to raise the mindset that whatever we do, we shouldn't forget there are always some organization or commercial companies which can fight back or try to put us down.
Yeah, so that's a whole different, the politics of it, and I think we should. I will talk with the ELT, and we need to have a longer discussion on this. But our sort of from a philosophical principle, Ashok, is that we have our principles. We want to decrease diabetes. We want to have public-private partnership, but we don't want to be monetized in the way that we don't want to be evolving for profit only. So yes, there will be challenges. Anything you do innovative would be challenging, and we have found that out too. But I think in the way that if I may reformulate, we want engagement with all sectors of society and in healthcare. Good. Any other question at this point? Okay. So if there is no other question at this time, we can have some time further for discussion. I will move to the next part. So this is really for you to be trained as a leader for our movement, not as a leader for something else, in how the framers of our movement, we have been discussing what we want to be in leadership over the last 10 years. And this is the work of many, many people. lots of discussion, and we have put it together in what kind of leadership we inspire and aspire to be. Because I think that for us to succeed globally as a movement, we need to have leaders who have a certain philosophical approach to what they're doing and have certain convictions and have certain way of behaving themselves that will make the difference between all the other competing interests that in everyone's life, so that we can engage more people to our movement. These are the three aspects of the GFCH leader, Global Foundation for Community Health, of course. As a leader, you are a missionary for the 52035 vision. You are the embodiment of an inclusive leader, and we'll spend some time about inclusive leadership. And our fighting words is people, power, science first. As simple as that is at the core of what we do. We believe that communities are not stupid. We believe that communities are intelligent. We believe that each community and people has an internal energy that needs to be coaxed. But once that internal energy is sparked out, catch them if you can, right? So we think that healthcare and health improvement, especially in CNCD, but general improvement of health will happen by giving people the power with adequate and better information rather than what's out there in Dr. Google to help themselves, help their communities. And the other part of it is critical. Everyone talks about innovation. Everyone talks about science. The 52035 movement and vision lives it. We have been stalled for 3 years now because we want to conduct a scientific study to test out the model. All of us personally, emotionally are convinced that, you know what, the 52035 model, it just seems so obvious it's going to work. But it's not going to work unless we test it and try it scientifically, and look at where the weak points are and how we improve on it in a frugally innovative and fiscally responsible manner. So those are the three credo of the GFCH leader, and you should know that. This is a lot of text, but I think as for especially those who are officers, country directors, part of the executive leadership team, part of the leadership team, or even members who are aspiring to gain position of responsibility, this is on the website. You should read it and you should let that sink in. And I will read it to you even if it's long, because it is that important. Officers of the GFCH commit to highest ethical conduct. They understand that the task of curbing CNCD in Mauritius will require sustained community action, neighbors helping neighbors in a generational struggle. While conducting the affairs of GFCH, officers will promote safe, apolitical, and respectful environment. Officers of the GFCH do not discriminate based on gender, religion, national or ethnic origin, or race. They understand that behavioral change towards better health is a trial and error, but constant effort approach towards curbing CNCD. Officers are mindful not to be judgmental of people's choices and will never engage in coercive practices to achieve any goals. They will work within regulatory and local legal framework together with content experts, stakeholders, and government officials to effect change for better health through the 52035 vision in Mauritius as a model for the rest of the world. So those are the values of the officers. And within our structure, and Caroline Dandrayan, who's our chief process officer and chief process and compliance officer, is going to pose SOPs and others. But in structure, you should know that the executive leadership team and the leadership teams are elected positions. with all membership. And then we have key members, and associate members who can, stand for officers as they become available or during election time. So this is something that I fell upon some years ago, and I think is what I think we should aspire to be, inclusive leaders. I'm going to go over. There's a lot of detailed information, but you can pause it and go over it. And there is a link to where this information comes from. I would invite you to look at that link. It will be in the next slides. But our inclusive leadership is based on 4 axes. If you want to be a leader or even a member in the foundation, you should practice self-awareness. You should have a shared vision of what our movement is about. You should be ready and willing to build relationships with other people within the movement towards our goal. And you should be a change agent. So if you are on a Sunday where everyone should be, doing other things, and you are spending time to be part of this presentation, you intrinsically somewhere want to change things. But how to be a change agent, that's the art of it all, right? So I'm going to go over each of these slides has a number of attributes. Again, I'll invite you to pause the slides when they appear in a video, and also go to the original website. It's wonderful work between Polish social scientists and Austrian social scientists who came up with this notion of inclusive leadership. So I'm going to go over a couple of them of what does it mean to practice self-awareness. You guys can read and digest the rest. All of us are imperfect, and that is part of reality. Don't be hard on yourself. I make mistakes all the time. If you see my email, I have typos, and I worry about those typos. But it's the difference for me between spending 5 more minutes cleaning up the typos or getting the message out. So we all are imperfect, and we work in different levels and so on. And so understand that. Listen and ask for feedback. You cannot imagine, if we are here today, it's because I have had to unload deeply held belief in how I thought the movement ought to go, because I listened, and when people pointed out things that we need to do better, we moved towards a better way of doing things. And so each one of you, especially those in the ELT, have been part of that journey of giving feedback to each other. Next time we ought to do better. But again, we are all human beings. We make things better by just learning and having an open mind. You should be approachable. You should know and act according to personal values that you have. You should know that with power, there is responsibility, right? And you should be a constant learner. So those are the axis 1. On axis 2, as a GFCH leader, you need to live a shared vision. All of us have developed the 5-20-35 vision in the last 10 years, but it's so exciting to see people like Ashok come on board, people like Krishna come on board, from Ashok from Germany, Krishna from Botswana, and others, a whole bunch of people who bring their experience and their vision. And so we make that vision together and move forward. So you can read all the different social goals and so on, keeping an open mind. You invite people to dream with you, and always, be the anti-toxic thinker. There's a whole culture in some places in Mauritius where there is such helplessness of nothing can be done because of X, Y, and Z. So gently able to question the current situation and provide a better vision is also making that a shared vision rather than your vision is one axis two of the inclusive leader. You build relationship as a GFCH leader. You are able to trust others. You should be able to have shared responsibility. Uh, you absolutely want to stop seeing the shortcomings in other people, but focus on the qualities they have. There have been people who, have not been active in the movement for years, and then one day they come up and say, I have some time, I have this connection, and let's work together to move things forward, right? So you shift the focus from seeing deficit in others to seeing resources and qualities. And you should be a listener. You should genuinely, when you're engaged, and I would hope, in your greater life, especially for the associate members, you listen with genuine interest, not just as a sort of waiting for your turn to talk, because those are the kinds of attributes that will make our movement unique. Remember, we're not creating a tribal organization. We're creating an organization that spans 19 different time zones. The culture and the experiences that people bring together is vast. But these fundamental qualities, I think, is common to all of us, whether you're in Sydney or Seattle or San Francisco or in Gaborone in Botswana. So that's very important. The last axis of an inclusive leader, you must be a change agent, right? Our fundamental thrust is built on proposing something so revolutionary, so new. How to go about it, uh, are some of the guidelines or guidances. And so look at it, you should hope that people have good intentions. Even if someone who is like we know someone who are hostile to some people are hostile, or some organizations may be hostile to our movement or our cause, but get them to the table. Don't be run over by them, but always have the possibility that those who are adversaries can become your friend in time to come. And I think if you proceed that way as a GFCH leader, we will be able to. We may not have quick wins, but in the medium and long range term, we'll be relentless, and we will achieve for the people of Mauritius as a model for the world of what we think to its better health. That we have the deep conviction of. And so those are the four axes of inclusive leadership, those associate members and others who are training to be leaders of the movement in the future. Look at those slides, and if you have any questions to myself or any of the other ELT members, please ask us. We are always an email away. I put this next and last section, understanding old and new power, because that's what the game is about, right? This is how we're going to, if you will, play the game. We're going to play the game of new power. And when it's going to become available, Quentin Adam, our chief medical officer, chief financial officer, who's in San Francisco, gave an important talk about old power and new power at the University of Mauritius stakeholders meeting that we had last December. His talk beautifully goes in detail about this. I just wanted to give you why our movement is different from garden variety movements that you see in any sort of sector of activity. Because we appreciate that the 21st century, the dynamic has changed. And our leadership, our engagement with power, our engagement with stakeholders is different in the way that has been done in the past centuries. It's a lot of words here. If you are interested in leadership, especially the associate members, and this book is highly recommended. New Power, I recommend it personally. Hymans and Timms, in how power values have changed in the 21st century and how in the 52035 movement we're using that. So you can read it, I will focus on the bottom right. One of the attributes that we use is radical transparency. Now, radical transparency may make you at a disadvantage in the short term, by announcing our plans. This is what we want to do. So those who are our adversaries now, they will become our friends in the future, may use that information against us, to block us. And it has happened. But that's fine, because in due time, I think we will incrementally win over. And so understanding that is important. I would, if you have some time this spring into summer, get this book. It's a great book to learn about leadership. So, how do we use the new power in the GFCH or GACH leader to organize? The old power behavior. People are consumers, are complying agents. In Creole, basically that's saying "Banisie la kontu," the sort of important people know everything, and consuming, people fear in destinsa means what to do. This is our destiny, right? So that's the old power behavior. How we're going to use the new power behavior is incrementally, called the participation scale. So all of you leaders are important to sharing the vision and getting people into our movement in a low friction manner. And a great deal of effort is being done by Dr. Vincent Oxenham, Mr. Dessoy, Mr. Andrain in Paris to increase our movement, certainly led by Dr. Lutschman as our Chief Development Officer in the Do's Don't Do's effort with Dr. Doman, part of the Mauritius strategy, in increasing our movement from, we're about 500 or so at people participating at different level around the world. By the end of 2020, we want to have 12,000 adherents. So that's the do's, don't do's. So 12,000 people in 12 months. And each of you people in the leadership is going to be helping us achieve that and understanding how that participation scale goes. So if you get someone to sign up at the website, they may not be spending hour and a half on a presentation that is highly technical. That's fine, but they could be someone who could sign a petition for us in time to come. Having their name and their email address is going to be important to be able to start to engage them. So Dr. Tanu, Pranab Tanu, Ms. Obigadu, and Quentin Adam are head of the newsletter. Those are vehicles through which we will share our vision and our mission. And so sharing, affiliating, adapting, acting, producing, and shaping is the participation scale. You could be anywhere in between. So some of us in the people in the ELT, we are shaping decision, right? We're shaping the movement. You may just be your first interaction as an associate member. You're just sharing, just like getting to know what this thing are. But think about how you can go up the scale to have more meaningful impact, not only for your personal growth as an individual, as a volunteer, but also the growth of the movement. And that's very important. I think we can talk about that. We'll have other presentations in the future that will address the new power, old power. Maybe Mr. Adam will be giving one of those talks. So this is the second part in general that I wanted to end with. We have some time for questions. The floor is on to you guys. Any questions? Anyone? Good. So if there is no question, any comments before we end the call? And Mr. Desoy is recording this call, and we will put it on the web, and we will please, those who, when you get the link, please share it with others so that we can start building a core group. Any final words from the ELT members?
Hi, Shiv. This is Ashok again
Hello,
from
Ashok.
Germany.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to know what is the next event planned, and if I understood correctly, for the time being, all the focus, all these experimentation or the testing of the model is planned for Mauritius.
Right. So we have 8 priorities, Ashok, which we have distributed, and part of the priorities. So you have wonderful associate members who have joined today's call. They are working in their different streams of work that's ongoing. Mr. Burke is leading the Community Health Officer white paper. So there's a lot of work being done there. Dr. Gunpat is leading the diabetes education effort. There's a lot of work going there. Dr. Vince Oxenham is leading the effort as the Chief People Officer to increase our exposure in the media and others. So a lot of work going there. So there's a lot of work going that's building towards your right. The tip of the iceberg for us is to be able to get a letter of support from the Ministry of Health so that we can realistically run this CLAD study. But below that tip of the iceberg, there are these 8 priorities on which we are spending a lot of time. So we can talk offline. I'll reshare those 8 priorities with you and others so that we can move forward this year. So thank you for that question. Any other question? Any other question? Okay, so I will call the meeting to an end at this time. Thank you so very much for joining. This will be on online, and until we meet again, onward and upward. Okay, take care, guys.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Shiv.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.